I think we I think we can get started, and welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join, and it's great to see everyone here today. And my name is Tessa Duste. For confusion, my name on Zoom is Tess, but I'm Tessa, and our guest is Tessa. And I'm part of the Young Urbanist Steering Committee, and I'm going to be your host today. Other than that, I have an academic background in urban design and city planning, and my experience is mainly landscape design and biophilic design, and really focus on the urban nature space on multi-levels. And I think over the course of 2020, and as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've experienced an increasing awareness of nature and biodiversity, together with a sense of compelling urgency to drive change for a more equitable and sustainable world. And our urgency to protect, grow, educate, and advocate nature and biodiversity is connected to our fast-growing urban population and our need to protect people, cities, and the environment. And so, of course, most of you will have heard this UN prediction that 70% of the world's population is going to live in urban areas by 2050. And so it's imperative that we start creating more awareness around this topic and start implementing solutions to combat climate change. And so today's topic is one that I'm very passionate about, yet one I believe has not been addressed enough. And so I'm very excited to introduce you all to Tessa from Makers of Sustainable Spaces. And Moss is one of the pioneering companies working on providing tangible solutions for our built environment. I've had the pleasure to work with Moss, and it feels important to share their work with this community. So first, Tessa will introduce herself and Moss, and then present some of their projects in their portfolio. And after this, we'll open the floor to questions and perhaps a discussion for 15 to 20 minutes. But before we begin, I'd like to encourage everyone to mute their mics until after Tessa has presented. And I hope everyone will contribute to the conversation afterwards, and feel free to join in by showing yourselves, and you don't have to hide yourselves behind your camera. I'm sure everyone's sick of all these Zoom meetings, so the more human experience we can have, the better. So thank you, Tessa, for joining us, and over to you.
Yes, thanks, Tessa. Tessa, will you share my presentation, or shall I share my screen?
I'm happy to present it, and you can tell me.
I can do both, but then I probably need... here, let me do it. I will share my screen.
Yeah, are you sure?
Yeah, that's...
And I will, for those who missed the introduction, if I can find the chat somewhere, I will post that in the chat for whoever missed it.
Let me see. Here we go. Can everyone see it?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Like that. So I'm really glad, Tessa, that you invited me to talk a bit more about our passion about green architecture. We do share the same mission. This is a group with all people interested in the urban environment, and the projects that Moss has been doing lately. Hopefully they will also encourage everyone here in this group to think about green as an object or a tool to increase a better living environment. So let me start by actually introducing myself. Let me go back. My name is Tessa Duste. I'm one of the founders of Moss. We started in 2014, actually directly after my graduation. I studied industrial design in Delft. I did my bachelor's and my master's there, and I was always, as a designer, you're always thinking about how will the future look like, because the designs you make, the products you build or think of, in most cases, they can only be on the market in 2 to 5 years. So you're always thinking about trends, development, states and principles of people to design a product that is not fit for the current market, but that is fit for the future market. And in doing so, we were always really busy on creating a future vision of the cities and our living environment. And this triggered me also to think about, okay, what the questions like, what city would I like to live in, and what is it? How does that look like? And what are the things that are important to me? So this actually, was a sort of the starting element, starting base point of the career that I've been, or the steps that I've been taking from 2014 onwards. So at that time we started Roof Life, actually was a different name that was specialized in green roofs, because my future city was actually a city where green, or where plants, animals and humans live in harmony. So that would mean that more green has to be brought back into our city environment. And one of the services that would be equipped or possible to work on was the roof environment. So we actually started on rooftops, and then along the way we dove in more in the entire aspect of green architecture. So our motto is that we make cities resilient, livable, healthy and enjoyable again. And we do that by bringing qualitative, inspiring and green environments to increase the well-being of people, and also create a harmonious existence with our environment. So as I already mentioned, we actually founded the company in 2014, but the idea started already in 2013. We are based in Amsterdam, but we also do projects in other countries in Europe, like Iceland, Germany, Hungary. And now we're also looking at the international market, but I will come back to that later. What makes us different than other companies? I would actually want more companies like Moss to be present in the world as it is right now. What makes us different from a landscape architect or a green interior company? A landscape architect really looks at landscapes. We really look at the built environment. So we focus on the building and all the facades or all the elements that are part of that. So surface, the top, like roofs, facades, but also interior, and then the direct landscaping around it. That's the thing that we focus on. And the designs that we make are very integrative. They are not added on top of the design afterwards, but we integrate it in most cases. It also depends on the architect, of course, that you work with, but the idea is that we integrate it from the start on into the designs that we make. So this makes it a total ecosystem, and we can think about irrigation, we can think about construction, all the elements that are important for a successful green project. We incorporate that already from the start. So that's, we can say that we're sort of an all-round green design company. Of course, we're working with the idea of bringing back nature into our built environment, but nature is something normally that would not be integrated into our built environment. That is something new that we are discovering. It is still a direction, a type of architecture that is developing. I mean, we've seen the Bosco Verticale in Milan. That was one of the first real green architectural designs and projects that took green architecture to a next level. But in that process and in that project, we have learned so much in this field that we could use for further explorations. And this is also what we noticed when I started with this business in 7 or already 8-9 years ago. that we had to learn so many things, but also we had to educate people about the importance of nature into our built environment, into our buildings. There were a lot of hesitations concerning maintenance, concerning cost, concerning construction. If I put a lot of money into this project for green, will I eventually make a return on investment on it? And especially at the first years, it was really difficult to convey people to explain and educate them about the importance, because it was all driven by money. Nowadays, we can see that, first of all, the municipalities are taking more responsibilities. So they are actually telling architects or project developers that they have to have certain certificates like GREEM or WELL that incorporate green as one of the important aspects. But also we are increasing our knowledge on the effects of green and nature on the built environment by data that we are collecting. And of course, we could only do that based upon the projects and our portfolio that we've built up. So this is an important thing, but nature is of course very important. It has a lot of health benefits, and I can imagine everyone here sitting inside for 90% of our times. Sometimes a walk through the forest or being close to nature is really helpful for your own well-being, for your health, and also mental health. Well, these are very general elements of why nature is so important for us. It is not only helping us personally and mentally, but it's also, of course, beneficial for our cities. So there's an increase in air and noise pollution. We have an increase in temperature, the urban heat effect. We have loss of biodiversity. We have water scarcities, and green can be helpful for all of these aspects. Why? So 80% of our world's population is now urban, and we spend 90% of our time indoors. So as I already mentioned, this creates stress, anxiety, and fatigue. You've also probably heard about the sick building syndrome. So all of these aspects that I'm talking about, let's see if we can change this by creating a more balanced living environment. So the benefits of green, we talk about cities' well-being, we talk about people's well-being, and we talk about companies' well-being. And as I already mentioned, cities' well-being can be also, now you see my, let me see. Yeah, there we are. We can have these impacts on cities can be definitely helped by a municipality or governments that can support, or that would say, okay, we need healthier cities, but companies are also a really big part of this. And we now see in our past client portfolio that big companies like Booking.com or Uber or even Amazon are really taking responsibility and looking at, okay, how can we change our offices to create a healthier environment to work in. So what we do is we, as I already mentioned, we design these green interventions. So we do indoors and outdoors, and we actually stop at the construction phase. So we work together with a lot of green parties that can help, that can really create a more qualitative green intervention. So we design it technically, we design it aesthetically. We look at how can we make it as sustainable as possible or as circular as possible. And we stop at the technical design or the detailed design. And then we have two optional phases, which is procurement. So we look at the green party that could be, that could do the installation. And then in most cases, we prefer also to do the guidance. of the installation. So our design pillars, we actually design with the plant itself as the main priority. So of course, most buildings are also designed for people, but we are actually the advocate for the plant. So of course you have architects that also look at the design and at the architecture from a people's point of view. We also consider that, but we also look at the plant's point of view in that. So for example, we need to look at the lighting. So can we use, just as the same as people need lighting, plants also need lighting. And actually, we don't like to sit in the draft, but plants also don't like to sit in the draft. So we have all these elements where we look at from a plant's point of view. We also say that no plant stands alone. So in nature, you also never find a plant singled out. We want to create healthy ecosystems for a better quality of our designs. Thirdly, we do not add but integrate green. I also already shortly mentioned that. So adding some pots and plants, that is not really something we do. Of course, in some projects we have to supplement the design with some potted plants. But in essence, we really look at integrated green designs, if that are like indoor jungles or is planters integrated in the flooring. And then once you have a planter with multiple species of plants, they can create ecosystems so they can become healthier. And lastly, we honor biodiversity. Of course, for the exterior green projects, this is more relatable than the indoor because we have a restriction there also with the typologies of green that we can actually use. But the more species we use and that actually fit into the same type of soil and the dryness of the soil, etc. If you put all these plants together, they can become healthier and happier. A couple of companies that we've worked with, maybe some sound familiar to you. Some of them are Dutch, some work internationally. I think what is most important about this is that the real big agencies and companies now see green as something they have to and they want to invest in, and not something that an architect draws in at the end and says, okay, well, something, a little bit of green touch there and we'll see what happens. Now they are actually asking us to be a part of this design team and process to fully integrate this into a better design. So that's a good development. So a couple of our projects, of course, as I already mentioned, data is really important, and it's becoming more important not only for the for the field of green architecture to actually show what the impact could be, what the benefits can be, but also for ourselves to learn more on what have we done, what is the end result, how does it affect the people that work or live in it, so we can also optimize our services and our designs. So one, we have a survey done with Jules. It's like an intensive survey, and one with booking.com to see how do they respond to these types of spaces where green is big impact of green is present, and this really helps us to move forward. So this is one of the projects that actually helped the portfolio and helped the industry to also show how green on a big gesture can be something for private companies to invest in. This is a company named Jules, and as you can see, it has won a lot of prizes. This actually helped to show architects and to show project developers what we can do with green in an environment and what the effects are. So this is 200 square meter greenhouses stretch out on the entire plane of the work floor, and there are a couple of meeting rooms and but also just private seatings installed in these greenhouses, so people can either work remotely or in a concentrated way, or they can meet with people, with their employees or their clients in a green environment. Here we see Duravermeer. So of course, we all know the green walls that we see quite on many projects and in references. And we're also looking in different ways on how to integrate green without and being innovative at the same way. So this is a wall where we added a lot of planters, and they are actually connected with a drainage system, a water system, and inlet pipes. So the water goes from the top down all the way down, and then it's automated throughout. So, but you also, of course, have to think for this project, as you can assume, also look at the maintenance. So how do you do maintenance at the top floor? I mean, you can reach it on the lower levels, but how do you reach the top floor? So these, once designing, of course, you need to think about irrigation, you need to think about maintenance, you need to think about light. Do we have enough natural light, or should we also incorporate grow lights? What type of plants do we do? For example, at the lower level, we can make use of more shady plants, and then going upwards, we can make use of plants that prefer more sunlight. And these are also material-wise, what should we do? These are all aspects that need to be considered. And of course, also construction and constructional weights are very important. So this is a project in Tilburg in the Netherlands. It's called Elho, and for this particular design, it's a family company. So we had a couple of areas, like rooms divided. We had the family story, and then we had a couple of themes, and these themes like circularity, sustainability, creativity, and family, we transferred that into the design, the designs that we make, but also the type of plants that we chose. Lastly, Mendix. Well, this is also where you can see that we try to make a couple of big gestures. So you see at the left side, we have a working floor that actually can view the green, but there's no like scattered planted pots all over the work floor. We have made sure that we make a couple of big gestures that people can look at, and in this sense create a bigger ecosystem and also create more impact in a way. This is an outdoor project, indoor and outdoor project in Amsterdam. And yeah, here is interesting is that you can see that we integrated the gardens on the top floor or on the floors of Nationale Postcode Loterij. But this is only possible if you are already in the design process from the early stage, because you need to have at least 30 centimeters for this particular garden type, at least 30 to 40 centimeters. You need a buildup of almost 9 layers in this case. And if you don't integrate that already at the start with the architects, of course you need to think about automated irrigation, then you would definitely know that this wouldn't be a possibility in a later stage. So I guess that worked out pretty well here. These are a couple of projects that we're actually now working on. So it would be great if you guys, if you're interested in this theme, to be following our LinkedIn and other social media channels, because in June of this year, we will install the top left project, which is Central Park in Utrecht. And it will house a tropical indoor garden on the 11th floor. with a mezzanine on the 12th, so you can actually look on top of it. It is called Central Park, not in that sense, because it's really a park feeling, and yeah, it's just the central point of the entire office, of the entire building, where people can gather and meet. This will be very, yeah, impactful project also for us. We already started working on that 6 years ago, so this is going to be really interesting to look at and to follow. Then I think the other one that I would like to highlight is the campus booking building. This is going to be the headquarters of Booking.com in Amsterdam, where they will have 60,000 square meters. And green is a very significant part of the story. So green in this building is actually guiding people upwards and guiding people to the areas where they should go. So the interesting thing for this is that green can not only play a part as something aesthetical or functional by cleaning the air, for example, but it could also guide people into the right direction. People are in that sense drawn to nature. So yeah, this is a way, this is something that we used in the design of Booking.com, where you can actually have a nature walk all through the building. Where people, once they have they want to have a 10 minutes walk or 15-minute walk, or they have a meeting, they can follow this route all through all the green elements of the building and actually yeah, have a sort of nature experience at the same time to boost also the creativity of the employees. We also participate in a lot of tender processes. These what is nice to see in these types of projects is that they are yeah, very high level. They are in most cases doing things that have not been done before, because of course you have to show something different. It's a sort of competition, so people look at architecture, design, and green in that sense in a different way. It's also, of course, for us challenging, because sometimes there are ideas that we think, okay, can we do this? So you also have to, of course, have a balance between something new, but also something that is actually what you can actually build. But these projects are really interesting for us because they are a bit more yeah, out of the box, and they also trigger us in designing and thinking about green in a different way. Yeah, so I actually wanted to I'm not sure how much time I already talked, but I really like interaction and having a discussion, and also seeing like you guys the point of view that you have, or the questions that you have, and have more of a conversation. So hopefully we can kickstart that.
Yes, thank you so much, Tessa. I hope that was inspiring and insightful for everyone as much as it was for me. So I think, thank you for the amazing presentation, and I think we can now open the floor for any questions that anyone may have.
That was incredible, really. Yeah, it's so insane to see working in the built environment, and in my case, quite closely with developers, where I'm a town planner, and where we work with just sort of getting rights for people most of the time. We do at least get to see a little bit of the design side of things, which is a passion of mine, but something never really followed. To see the level to which there's this like thought process happening in the Netherlands with the stuff that you guys are doing, it's just not, we just don't see it here. So it's just like mind blowing to see how cool that all of that stuff is. A quick question, and I'm going to pose it in this way. In my context, in the South African context, it's one thing persuading developers to implement landscaping designs on the projects that they're busy with as well, just because of how expensive it is, and with the constraints that they face. But to retroactively green a city one would obviously need to kind of try and widen that scope of greening. And in South Africa, also our public funds really aren't prioritized for this sort of thing, where the municipalities and governments need to spend money on building houses for people. That's far more important. So my question is, have there been any incentivization programs overseas where new developments are given some sort of tax break or additional floor area or some sort of sweetener for implementing these green designs, and then for also sort of extending the green designs to neighboring buildings or neighboring spaces that aren't green?
Yeah, great question. And so this is particularly for the Netherlands, you mean, or
anything you know of?
Yeah. So in the Netherlands, actually, we have a lot of subsidies for green roofs, for example. So in that cases, it's more about how can we store more water, how can we bring back biodiversity, how can we, so it's partially green, but it's also water related. So the municipality started with providing subsidies to private owners of houses, but also to companies and bigger developments to incorporate green roofs. This has now, so some governments or some municipalities still do this, but what we see now is a change in, first of all, if it's a plot given by the municipality, that they have higher, higher requirements before the product development actually starts, or project development already starts. And then you have a tender process in most cases. So a couple of companies are invited to design something, and then these requirements of the municipalities need to be incorporated in that. One of the questions or the elements that they incorporated said they say, okay, 2050, it has to be zero tolerance for, it has to be energy neutral. That's one of the elements. So it's not only about green, it's also about energy, it's also about water, it's about all these aspects. But the municipality started with an incentive program, like money driven. So you get a subsidy for 1 square meter, 30 euros a square meter per element, per green roof. But now they're sort of starting to look at more ways on how can we, bring that back to the requirements at the start of developments, to look at it from that way. So they have all these incentives to design in a more green way. Of course, we have all the certificates now, like BREEAM and WELL and LEED, that are leading the way to a more green buildings. And these are in our country, in the Netherlands, but also in other countries in Europe. These are ways to set yourself apart from other projects, from other developments that are going on. So it is also now a way of marketing and a way of doing sales, like, okay, we are a BREEAM excellent company, or we are this is a project that has this or this certificate and this certificate. So it's now also a way to set yourself apart. So this is actually a good way. It's maybe not in all cases the right or incentive. It's a sort of incentive, but maybe sometimes based on different values, but it works. So that's a good thing that's been going on, but it definitely needed a lot of push from our government to support and to help this movement go forward. And I also had a discussion actually with Tessa already before, because we're also looking at other countries to internationalization, and we're also looking to South Africa or other African countries in the region. And I think a lot of things can happen in regards to storing water. and then using that at the same time to bring that back to either green development or to bring that back to actually having drinkable water. But there are many other more pressing concerns in South Africa, indeed, in relation to social housing, or that might need, that might get the attention that it needs, of course, but makes green architecture in that way a bit more like lower on the list, and especially for interior green. It's maybe a different question, because it also needs a lot of water to be contained and to be healthy and happy. So in that sense, for every country there are different concerns, and the stakeholder management map is different laid out, governmental influences are different. So really interesting, but also and sometimes a bit pressing, maybe, because you would like to see more green in these developments.
Absolutely. I mean, just the benefit that it provides to people in their living spaces is so huge.
Yeah.
But I mean, thinking about like retrofitting buildings for water storage, and there's so many different things to think about, like weight.
Exactly.
Just the one thing that pops into my mind is like, how do you add a whole forest to a building that can't hold the extra like 100 tons of whatever it's going to be, right? Anyway, it's really cool, really interesting. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, I see Stephanie has raised her hand.
Great work, Tessa. I'm just I'm really curious as to how far you want to push the envelope on this, because having done a lot of work on interior spaces in a city like London and so on, it's very hard to sustain these planted environments in an artificial environment. And I think the clue, and you mentioned Stefano Guerri and Bosco Verticali, and there's some fantastic examples in Asia about how you integrate indoor, outdoor greenery so that it supports biodiversity and still biophilic design and so on. I do think, it's a huge challenge, as you say, because you have to persuade developers and local governments. Where do you think you'll go with this? I mean, how far are you wanting to push the boat out on it?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's also something I guess we're still figuring out ourselves. So I think that that's why we also really press on the matter that we are involved already in a very early stage, because once there's a project where you have to integrate green on places where it would, you would have to bring irrigation all to the top floor while it was not yet there, light it up with a lot of grow lights that also cost, of course, a lot of energy. If these questions arise, or if these if the architects want this in their design, we in most cases say, okay, well, this is not something we prefer, and then we try to change it towards areas where there's already natural daylight, or where there's already water supply arranged, or where the construction could actually handle it. But if you're already in the front of the process involved, then it is easy to do that. If you're already too late in it, then in some cases it's we have to say, okay, well, this is not possible. Or in most cases, then if you have to adjust so much of your built environment, then it also raises, of course, the costs of it. So one of the solutions to this is to already start in the process really early on, so you can actually design biophilic spaces based upon what does the building look like, where is natural daylight coming in. Of course, people also enjoy natural daylight, so how can we combine it with green and that people can also enjoy it? what are the most logical places to place green, and how can we make that specific spot then really impactful. So that is one of the first I guess solutions to that, so that it's like making more sense. But how far do we push the envelope? Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's for every project we look at it and question ourselves, okay, why are we doing this, and are we still doing this for the right cause? Of course, we have a lot of projects there also that come to us, and that where the architects are saying like, okay, we want to have like green here, and it's from the ceiling down. Oh yeah, we don't have any lights and we don't have any water, but I guess you can make it work, right? And if you don't, then we use artificial plants. And then we're like, yeah, sorry, but we're not going to do that. You know? So we do have some, I mean, we've set out our boundaries for ourselves as a company, what we stand for, what is our mission, what are our values, what are our green design rules, and what are our mantras that we you know, want to work on, want to live up to. And if we can stay true to ourselves, then I guess we can keep on working and keep on designing these green projects that are beneficial for not only ourselves, for the building, but also in a sustainable and economic way. But I'm not sure what the future will bring, but hopefully this staying true to yourself, to your nature, and to your vision and beliefs will hold up, and will make sure and ensure that we create beautiful spaces in a right way.
Yeah, maybe also evidence of impact. I mean, you research.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so we're now doing a research with the Wageningen University, also on the impact of plants on people, and these researchers will definitely help us and to define what is really the impact of green, what is really the impact of plants, and how can we use that to our benefit in inside built environments. So yeah, ongoing process.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
I see two more hands. Maybe Ezra can start.
Okay. Tessa, thanks so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
I really appreciated that it was not only really good design, but I also could really see the value that the design brought to people in the built environment, but also using the building. And I guess I've got more of a comment to share from some of my personal work experiences of a project that I'm working on at the moment. It's a huge site, 700 hectares of industrial land that's being redeveloped in Ireland. And it's interesting that one of the kind of big moves that we're implementing across the site is a kind of a site-wide scheme and greening scheme. And one of the kind of strategies was to redesign the site with 50% green space. And a large part of that 50% green space comes from the roof space, but also the building facades. And what's been really interesting is engaging with our water engineers who actually fully believe that these kinds of strategies really kind of changes the way they do drainage systems across the city and impacts. So kind of moving away from kind of tunneled underground drainage systems towards more natural drainage systems that we used to have in the past. So it's interesting that kind of something at the building scale can really be implemented at a city scale, and we can hopefully see that being implemented in policy in city making, which I guess then would really make developers take more note of implementing these when they do buildings.
Yeah, I think definitely. And one of the systems that you also may want to look at is called the smart flow systems. especially for on rooftops. These are, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it.
No.
It actually looks at the data of the weather and the weather forecast. And then once they expect rain to fall, they actually remove all the water from the rooftop. And then once rain is falling, then it will store the rainwater on the rooftop. So it's like an 85, you also have like thicker crates, but the most common is 85 millimeters. It will store all the water on the roof. So it would also relieve the sewage system at that moment of all the rainwater that is falling. And of course, it can also use that water for the green roof itself. And the new thing about it is that it actually, the actions upon the data it gets from the weather forecast. So this might also be an interesting solution for the project that you're working on.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think green infrastructure for a long time has been something that we've been thinking about, especially in Europe, especially in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, with all the water we have. But I think what's still quite new as part of green infrastructure is actually using buildings to slow down kind of drainage and using buildings as water management systems.
Yeah, no, definitely. And a lot of innovations are actually starting, are being built and being, constructed in a way. So one of that is the smart flow system. It's called the Boulder Duck. It's actually, I think the company is in Rotterdam. It's located in Rotterdam. But I think we should be very take care of our rainwater, and especially also in South Africa. How can we deal with water storage, and how can we deal with natural sourced water to not flow away, but actually retain it and reuse it.
Yeah.
I see two hands. Let's perhaps have Siva Sile's question, and then Roland, and then we can see how much time we have left. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for the platform, and thank you, Tessa, for the presentation. It was awesome. I'm still fresh from varsity, and I'm a town planner and project manager. So I just wanted to ask, how do you recognize the urban biodiversity within informal settlements, considering the fact that it's populated with irrigated structures? As in like shacks, in the other word, and it's usually polluted, and there's a lot of water running, like broken sewages, etc. So like I just want to understand in terms of, like, in a broad spectrum of my question. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I just wanted to know that, because I have a passion in sort of in that kind of field.
No, great question. And I guess to sum it up, or to see if I understand it correctly. So in relation to biodiversity and bringing green to the city environment, how do you deal with the challenge of maybe polluted grounds due to sewage systems that leak, or water that is contaminated? So first of all, what we always do, if it's look at the contamination that is in the soil. So our projects, we always do, if it's outdoors, and in most cases also in the Netherlands or in Europe, if you have like a industrial area, in some cases the soil can be contaminated, and this would really affect, especially if you would install trees. These are of course quite expensive elements of green that you then install in your project, so you don't want the tree to be to die after a year or two. So we first of all, we always do checks, but what we also do is look at the nearby environment, what grows and what doesn't grow, and mostly what does grow in the direct environment of that particular plot. look for the types of plants, look for the indigenous type of plants, look for plants that are strong, that can deal with those types of contamination. So it's partially research, which type of plants can actually uphold those types of environments. But secondly, it's also looking very closely at the direct environment and use those type of plants also for that area that you want to rewild or green up. If you have the resources, of course, you can also regenerate the soil and the substrate and the environment into a healthy environment for living environment for plants. But of course, that would ask quite a lot of investment, and in some cases that's not possible. Would that answer your question a bit?
Okay, cool. Thank you. That was awesome. Yeah, you answered me.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thanks. Sure.
I think we have time for one more question, and then we can start wrapping it up. So perhaps Roland can go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. Hi, everyone. Well, I mean, my question is quite simple. Obviously, I've noticed that you guys are a value-driven organization in terms of the decisions you make, which is very refreshing in the private sector. So I guess my questions as landscape architects, do you kind of also filter to what extent to what projects and what clients you work with in context of the building? Obviously, for building to be carbon neutral or carbon positive, it's not just the green infrastructure inside, it's more than that. It's the life cycle of the building, whether it has car parking, the material, where the energy from. We're going on and on when we talk about a building that really is green. So I guess you guys procure what projects you work with.
The sound is breaking up a little bit.
Sorry.
But perhaps you could.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Apologies. Sorry, I'll start from the beginning. Apologies. I'll be quick. Obviously, you're a driven organization, which is very refreshing. I just want to ask, in the context of the climate and biodiversity emergency, do you guys procure what projects, what buildings you work with? It's not just about whether a building has greenery. It's more than the life cycle of the building, the materials, whether it has car parking, all these things. Do you guys procure what projects you work with? Because, there's a term called greenwashing. How do you make sure that you don't amount to greenwashing and you actually work with projects that looks at the, the bigger picture, how people use these buildings? Do you guys have a policy on who do you work with based on, because obviously you're value driven around the biodiversity crisis we face, whether it's in South Africa or across the world? I hope it's not too critical, but that's my question. Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So I think we are now. So good question. And we had a couple of experience already where we were actually wondering, okay, are we going to work on this? Yes or no? And sometimes we decided not to work on it, and sometimes we said, okay, it might be greenwashing, but the impact that the green has on the building, or the impact, visual aspect of the building, of the green on the building, is actually really beneficial for the greater good of the development of green architecture. So then we said yes, for example. So we always try to say, okay, is this a project that would fit us? Thankfully, in most cases, they fit, but sometimes it's also a bit difficult to have a really good view on all these elements that you've listed down, right? So how they are dealing with maybe the building on itself now is quite sustainable, but how do you deal with with this building in 10 or 20 years? Can we reuse the materials? Yes or no? Can we? What type of isolation do they use? Can we? Is it really sustainable? It's so complex in a way, and sometimes it's also not really transparent enough to be able to view that. But thankfully, we work with a lot of companies or private owners that actually are really interested in biophilia or in green, because they know we design something really impactful and intense and integrated. And if they already approach us, then they have already taken some steps. They took already some steps to be there and to value the impact of green and to value sustainability in a way. Or so we don't have a lot of projects where we have to say no to. And if it's greenwashing, in most cases, it's just a green roof somewhere, a sedum roof or whatever. It's like it's a layer somewhere that is really cost effective, but is green in a way. And if you really want to have a design that we create, which is involving a lot of a design trajectory, first of all, but also a lot of plans and a lot of impact, then in most cases they're already really concerned about this topic. So, but it is something, that if we have doubts, then we always discuss it, and sometimes we do say no. But now we also have the luxury to say no. At the start, we were happy that we would get any work. So it also depends maybe on the maturity of your company. But yeah, good question. Yeah.
No, I'm glad you guys have the luxury. Not a lot of people do, but
Yeah.
it's a hard one. Yes, but thank you for the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think we've come to the end of the time, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined today. I saw some people coming in and out, and I know I have many more questions outstanding, so I hope we can continue this discussion on another platform or perhaps host a follow-up event. Tessa, you're more than welcome to join our platform on Facebook. We are looking at how we can expand the platform a bit more, and I will be sure to send everyone all of Mas's links so you can also stay up to date with what they're doing. But yeah, feel free to send us any messages with questions, and thanks so much to Tessa for taking the time to join us today, and to everyone for attending.
Yeah, I'm really also curious to all the great stuff that all of you are doing. So please connect, and hopefully we will meet someday in the future face to face. That would be great.
Thanks,
Thank
Tessa.
you all so much.
Thank you.
Maybe we can meet in the Netherlands.
Yes.
Ireland, we all.
Yes, that would be really nice. Thanks so much.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.